Hello, everyone. Welcome to SoulPrism Podcast, where we share bite sized nuggets of wisdom for your body, mind, and soul to serve you, the emerging soulpreneur. My name is Tammy Mack, and I'm really excited to be talking to Sam, my guest today. Sam Kabert is a TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and former Silicon Valley entrepreneur who walked away from a seven-figure business to find real fulfillment. Now, through his breath method, B.R.E.A.T.H method, and soul life balance philosophy, he helps high performers regulate their nervous systems, clear brain fog, and reconnect with purpose. Welcome, Sam, to Soul Prism Podcast.
Tammy, thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here with you and always excited to see where these conversations are going to take us.
I'm really excited too because the tag word, the trend right now is all about somatics, getting out of your head and getting into your body. I would love to hear why you feel that it's important.
Yeah, 100%. So, in mainstream culture, we talk about mental health, and it's been absolutely amazing that in the past few years, we've taken some real strides to destigmatize mental health. Unfortunately, though, mental health is just half the picture. And the reason why is because any single time we have a thought that sends a signal to the body, and to your point of somatics, that signal in the body creates a feeling. Now, because most of us are living in a baseline of survival, we are disassociating, distracting, and numbing because we don't feel comfortable feeling that uncomfortable feeling. So, when that thought sends a signal to the body, that creates a feeling. We no longer allow ourselves to feel that feeling, and it gets sent back up to the or to the mind, and we start ruminating in our thoughts. So, mainstream society goes, wow, we're all stuck in our heads. We need to prioritize mental health. Now, here's the thing: mental health equals thoughts, which language or the language of the mind is thoughts, whereas emotional health, the language of the body, is feelings. So, emotional health equals feelings. Now, in neuroscience, there's something called the 90-second rule, and that teaches anytime that we experience a thought, that sends a signal to the body that we just talked about, that creates a flood of chemical reactions. And when it's a negative feeling and we don't allow ourselves to feel it, then that feeling doesn't it's not allowed to be felt, so we get stuck in the mind. Whereas if we allow ourselves to feel what's coming to the surface, it actually only takes 90 seconds. So utilizing the breath method, or just simply feeling safe enough to feel, we can move through these uncomfortable emotions and not ruminate in our mind. So more than anything, we need to prioritize not just mental health, but emotional health as well.
Wow, I there's so many directions I want to go with that opening because I don't know if you know, I've worked in mental health in the hospital, so inpatient mental health or the psych ward for 5 years. And what I definitely notice is in hospitals, we don't address any of that. We address it by giving pharmaceuticals so that you can fit back into society instead of actually feeling things. What I notice a lot with my patients on psych, many people in society, they're disembodied in their body. We have this huge dissociation problem where it doesn't feel safe to be in our bodies. It doesn't feel safe to feel our emotions. And so we would rather numb. We would rather scroll on social media. We would rather run away from our body and our feelings rather than feeling them. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? And how do we help people feel safe to feel?
Yeah, that's the reason why I got into breath work so much and nervous system regulation. To your point of somatics, the neuroscience behind breath work is when we breathe in specific patterns, we can actually enter in. This is a big scientific term here. It's called transient hypofrontality. And all that means is that we're temporarily shutting down the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking mind. So when we utilize breath work to shut down our thinking mind, it's a common misconception that there's no way to silence the mind. People will say, like, oh, you can't silence the mind with breath work. I'm like, okay, neuroscience proves differently, because literally the state is called transient hypofrontality, which means to temporarily shut down the thinking mind. And when that happens, now all of a sudden we're teaching our body to be safe enough, and we're entering into the limbic system, or the limbic brain, which is the emotional health. And that's when we can move through those uncomfortable emotions. Coupled that with the fact that emotions are energy in motion. A lot of people will hear emotions are energy in motion and be like, that sounds a little woo, right? Or that sounds like a little nice in theory. But when you understand the 90-second rule, that yes, emotions are designed to move through you, it's completely backed by neuroscience that these are just energies. So when the conscious mind understands that enough, now the unconscious mind will feel safe enough to go to these depths, to allow those energies to come up to the surface so that we can move through them. So the way I like to utilize breath work is kind of like a hierarchy, right? Like we start with, and you experience this with me just in a short couple of minutes, but breathing in a grounding way so we can prepare the nervous system to relax and feel safe. Then we turn up the dial and we enter into a more alert state, because we're kicking up the dust of those residues of that emotional baggage of everything that we've compartmentalized, and we're releasing it. And then we soften as we exit it back into rest and digest. So we now have clarity moving forward and we feel grounded.
I love that so much. First of all, I love that you are teaching your body to feel safe. And a lot of the times when we're in our head, our neocortex, it's that logic. And sometimes we need a little bit of logic to feel safe.
Mhm.
So, teaching our body, whether you teach them a little bit about the process so they understand it, so they can feel safe to go further, because a lot of people, they don't feel safe if they don't know. 99% of people
Yeah.
do not feel safe in the unknown, in the void. And so having a little bit of understanding of what the process is, knowing that it's 90 seconds, dude. Like you're just going to
Mhm.
feel 90 seconds and then you're going to move on, right? And it's safe to feel that, so that when we go into the limbic brain, which is fight or flight, it can be very survival. And to know that, okay, let the process move, let the process move so that we can get even deeper. So we're not running away from our emotions, but we're actually allowing ourselves to feel them, to process them. And then once you do that, you actually get to go even deeper into the superconscious, or even deeper into your soul or your essence, right?
Mhm.
And so I love your breath process. It feels very soft. It feels very circular. It feels very supportive, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
100%. That's the idea. Yeah. I'm glad you see all that. And we're speaking the same language here. I love it. Yeah.
I'm curious. Now, we've never talked about this, but do you know anything about human design?
Oh, I love human design. I got into human design back in 2019. I'm a manifester. I haven't really had human design like at the forefront of my awareness in the past couple of years, but when I first discovered it about 6 years ago, I really got into it. Not so much that like I totally understood, because it's like it's really deep, but like enough understanding to be like, oh, I understand more about myself now, you know?
I love that. And thank you for sharing. So, you don't know this, but I'm actually a quantum human design specialist. I
Oh.
specialize in human design. And so, I love that you shared that you're a manifester,
Mhm.
because a manifester, one of their not self themes, or the way that they are out of balance or out of alignment, is anger. And that
Yeah.
was one of the things that we brought up during our own call today, our own talk. So, just that I'm a 6-2 splenic projector, right? And the not self theme is bitterness and being resentful. And that is anger turned inward. Where Sam here is a manifester. And so his anger is like this bubble of belief. And when you burst that bubble, what comes out is an energetic explosion, right?
Mhm.
Anger. And so I really enjoyed that we really dove deep into anger. And I would love if you could talk a little bit about anger from your perspective, but also from what it is that you see with many of your clients, because you said that many of your clients are women in their
Mhm.
40s and 50s, and we're all collectively dealing with an underlying emotion.
Yeah, for sure. Anger is something that I really had to work through in my early years, from like, my youth to college to even my early 20s, like before I got into spirituality and the healing work. And yeah, I can look back and see anger really strong then. Now, how anger shows up for me is really much more subtle. I don't experience so much anger anymore, to the point that I might say, "Oh, I'm not angry person," but we are not cyborgs here. We're not like hopefully we're not on the path to merging with AI and becoming cyborgs. At least for now, we're not, unless you really have like a Neuralink attached to you, if they're even offering those now, or you're just in a love relationship with your Chat GPT or something like that. Or, you know what I mean? But for the most part, most of us in this podcast that are listening, most of your community, we're here to feel all of the emotions. So when anger or another emotion comes up, typically it's tied to a root cause. And we know that as a trigger. We all throw the term trigger out like, oh, feeling triggered or whatever, but we don't actually know what it means. It's all tied to a gestalt, which it just basically means we have our root cause of the first time we experience an intense version of anger, whatever the emotion is. Then we have significant emotional events in our life that link up to that root cause. And when we do our work to reprogram the unconscious mind, now in the future, when we move forward and experience that anger, we can experience it in the present form without getting triggered and linking it to those other times in our life when we were feeling it so intensified, which is why we have an unwarranted amount of anger in that moment. Now, to the point of why anger is so important to admit, like, yes, I feel this way. And I see this, like you said, with a lot of my clients that are typically a lot like in their 40s and 50s, like women. I don't know why that is, it just is. But, typically they'll talk about other emotions, and then when I ask them about anger, that's when they start to open up and be like, oh yeah, I experience anger. And anger is the root cause behind all of the other emotions. It starts with anger, and then after we release anger, we get to sadness, we get to fear, we get to hurt, guilt, and shame. And if we start with one of the other emotions, like even if it's sadness, which is like number two on the hierarchy, we're not getting to the root of the emotional cause. So when we address our anger, then all the other emotions, not that they're just gonna like go away on their own and not be linked to that root cause, but they're going to soften and we won't feel those as intense. Yeah, I'm huge with addressing anger for sure.
I love that you brought that up, because what I'm moving through right now is this divine feminine, like moving through women collectively and male, right? But just
Hmm.
this divine feminine. And a lot of the things that we are dealing with is anger. We're very, very angry, inequality and whatnot. But I really appreciated that you said, like, the secondary emotion sometimes is sadness, because that is literally what I was feeling in my chest, was so much grief. And I'm going to have to tap that out when we finish our call, because I did feel underneath that anger when I was allowing myself to feel anger. Because a
Hmm.
lot of the times we judge anger, like you said, oh, I'm not an angry person. We judge anger when anger is very, very important. It's very important to feel all our emotions. And
Hmm.
so allowing yourself to admit, hey, I feel angry, or I'm an angry person, or hey, I'm a perimenopausal woman, I am very angry right now. But allowing yourself to feel angry so that we can address all those other emotions. And I loved how you used the domino effect, right? Once you hit the root, the domino effect. So I really appreciate that. Most of my viewers are women. We are experiencing a lot of anger right now, a lot of injustice. And so working with that root cause through breath work, right? So you don't have to get into the story, all of the stories, because once you get into that stories, you start becoming a victim of your stories, a sister of circumstance, as I call it. And you came up with something ingenious about moving from being a sister of circumstance into, as you said, the creatrix mode as well. I'd love if you'd share a little bit about that.
A few years ago when I was getting into breath work, like teaching breath work, I was like, oh, I should name my breath work because a lot of people out there name their breath work. So one day I just received a message of creatrix and I was like, ooh, I like that. Like I'm really into like being a co-creator of your reality and breaking through from the matrix. And then I started to see creatrix pop up everywhere. And we could call that a sign, a synchronicity, the reticular activating system from the brain, whatever it is, who knows. But I started to see it. So I researched it and I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't know that was actually a thing. So I didn't roll with creatrix, but I don't call my breath work anything other than the breath method is what I utilize. And within the breath method, one of the things that we do in steps 3 and 4, the E in breath and the A in breath. E is energy to reveal. Since we know emotions are energy in motion, it's actually addressing that story. We are leaning into the shadow work there to be like, okay, so what is the narrative? What is the story? What is this energy revealing to me? Because instead of toxic positivity and compartmentalizing it, we need to accept it, which gets us into the A of breath, which is accept to surrender. Because usually when we start to see that story, we're like, oh no, I don't want to look at that. But when we surrender to it, that's when we invoke the power of positive thinking, which gets us to the T in breath, and we transform it into an empowering belief. So, a little bit more than what you asked about, but I really am into shadow work and like honoring what's there and being like, okay, so if I want to rewrite the story, first I need to know what the story is, and I can't reject it. I have to accept what the truth of this piece of programming has been in me so that I can rewrite it from there.
That just syncs up with everything that we talk about in this community: awareness, acceptance, and then we get to move on from that and we get to build a new story. So, what does H stand for in breath?
Yeah, I didn't give you, I only gave you 3 letters there. H is habits to integrate. So the idea is like, okay, as a result of what came up, what is one action, habit, or behavior that I will take? My story comes back from psychedelics, ayahuasca, bufo, all the things. And I was a psychedelic integration coach for a while there. And my license plate says integration. A big book I wrote in 2022 is called Soul Life Balance, and the subtitles igniting and integrating spiritual awakenings. So the word integration is really close to my heart. And the idea here is like, okay, we can go through this process like tapping or breath work or whatever the modality is that we're utilizing and having an experience. But all it is an experience if we don't take action and integrate it into our life. So I tell people all the time, like, hey, when you're first working with the breath method, like that's cool, that's great, that's like training wheels, but ultimately I don't want you to be utilizing the breath method, because the more you start to integrate what's coming up, you'll just be unconsciously processing with ease. And it's when we need to constantly come back to like our tools that that's a clear cut sign that we're not taking action and integrating what's been shown and revealed to us.
Oh, I was just talking about this. It's not that we act as if or we're pretending or anything, but we're taking aligned action steps and we are broadcasting a new field, right? So we are no longer attached to the past or attached to the old story of who we are, but we're taking aligned action and we're showing the field or we're behaving in a way that is creating a new story, right? And so I love that H
Yeah.
is all about your habits, your next aligned action, and how can you integrate, how can that be part of your new story? And you do that by taking aligned action.
Uh,
So I love this so much. How can people find you? How can people work with you?
Yeah, I have a community called the Breath Club. Every single Wednesday, I lead guided breathwork sessions in real time. There's an online community and also over 20 breathwork pre-recorded exercises. So you can join the Breath Club by going to my website, samkabert.com/club. Once again, that's samkabert.com/club. My last name is KAB as in boy, ERT, samkabert.com/club. And that's my online community called the Breath Club, where I teach people how to reset their nervous system and rewire their mind, and these short, actionable breathwork sessions.
Amazing. And I will share a link in the show notes so that you guys can all find him. Thank you so much, Sam, for being on the SoulPrism podcast, for sharing your work. It is so needed right now. I use breath work every day. And that's what I find is the most important thing for us is to get into our own frequency, get into our own energy, and broadcast from our own energy versus what everyone else is telling us to
Mm.
do, to be, to act. And so I love your message. I'm definitely going to share your links in the show notes so that everybody can find you and join your breath work. And you also have a book. So I would love to share that book as well because we're all readers here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tammy. I appreciate the time and everything you're doing for your community and spreading and sharing your light. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.